What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Drive for Show, DFS for Dough here on RotoGrinders. Happy to be with you once again, taping on a Monday evening. A little bit later start time if you're watching this live, but Noto had a back-to-school night for his little guy, and I have our back-to-school night for our little ones. I guess not little ones anymore. None of them are really little ones. Grade schoolers tomorrow. So we just pushed back the start time a little bit, and should be fairly easy for us to get through this field with the second event of the FedEx Cup playoffs and only 68 golfers in the field for this week. So we'll probably be a fairly brief show for you tonight, but we'll still break it down for the BMW Championship. Of course, I am Justin Van Zuiden, aka STL Cardinals 84. I've got Derek Farnsworth alongside me, who hit another outright with Will Zalatoris last week. So nicely done, Noto, and really nice to see Zalatoris kind of finally get that off his back, and maybe he can take off from here.
Yeah, life is good right now. Willie Z with the first win. The house is about to be a lot more quiet here in the next couple of days with little one going back to school. So, life's good. Football's around the corner. Baseball playoffs about to gear up. So, doing well. I'm excited for this week because after this, Tour Championships kind of blah for DFS and betting. And then we don't have anything for a little while, right?
Yeah, I believe there's a few weeks off there before the fall swing gets back into maybe in, say, mid-September. I'm going to pull out the schedule and see. Now that they switched everything around, I always get confused as to how much of a break there is. But let's see. So the Tour Championship is next week, which would be the week of the 22nd. And then I'll load up the 2022-2023 calendar here, and we'll see when that starts back up. But it feels like there's usually maybe 2 weeks before the fall swing kicks in. So a little break never hurts, especially if you're starting to get into FL research and all that stuff. So yeah, September 15th is the start of the first event. So we've got 2 weeks off. Between the Tour Championship and the start of the fall swing. So basically, if you're not playing next week or you don't think next week is all that great, you got 3 weeks, which it just coincides nicely with the start of football season.
Yeah, for sure. And then President's Cup should be fun too, assuming all those big names don't go to live and aren't able to play. That might be just a bunch of scrubs out there. But fun time in the schedule, and we got to talk about this playoff, I guess.
Yeah, so it was a wild finish there. Will Zalatoris making the par save on 18, which got him into the playoff, and then they both Zalatoris and Straka got in trouble off the tee on the first playoff hole, or was it the second playoff hole? Zalatoris went way out into somebody's backyard, and Straka went in the water. They both ended up making really solid par saves there. And then they went to the third playoff hole. They decided to play a par 3. Zalatoris' ball played Plinko with the rocks and somehow did not go into the water. Straka did go into the water, and then Zalatoris decided to drop anyway and ended up winning with a bogey. So it was one of the wilder 3-hole playoffs that you will see. But they both made some clutch putts there, despite the ball striking in those last few holes being quite suspect. But it was really entertaining.
Yeah, it was wild. For a while, it was looking like Zalatoris was going to run away with it. And I got a couple friends into golf betting the last couple months, and they both had Zalatoris. And I'm like, who is this Straka guy? He was hitting everything to 19 feet every single hole, even if he was behind a tree. And they just couldn't believe it. I couldn't either. I mean, missing 6 straight cuts. And then, Z makes that big putt to force the playoff. And he yells, what are they going to say now? I thought that was pretty cool. But then, in the second playoff hole, you have Straka gets a good break. He ends up being dry, and you see him taking his shoes off. And then Zalatoris is over there with a 5-iron thinking he's going to curve it around the trees and go for it over the water. They both end up, one laying up, and I couldn't believe Straka took that penalty. I was like, okay, we got this, Willie Z, and then he sticks it to 6 feet. Z sticks it to like 13, but both make, and then like you mentioned, the par 3 was just wild. One of the Golf Digest guys went out there and tried that shot that Zalatoris would have had when it was in between the grass and the rock, and it went straight backwards into the water when he tried it. So I'm glad he made the decision to go back. Worst case scenario, probably force another playoff hole. So yeah, it was awesome. Great to see him breaking through, and feel a bit for Straka, but I mean, just out of nowhere, second place finish, and now he's like top 10 in the rankings or something.
And the weird thing was, like, Zalatoris hit his ball first on the par 3. And so the pin was tucked on the right side. I think it's guarded by a bunker in the front, and then you had the water around it. Like, Straka did not have to go after the pin. He obviously knew that Zalatoris was going to have either no shot or a very difficult shot, unless he just kind of shanked it a little bit. But it seemed like he took a line that was maybe a little more aggressive than he should have, given the fact that he wasn't playing first. I could understand it if he was playing first, but after already seeing Zalatoris hit, I thought the decision was a little strange, especially given that the ball striking had been a little wayward for both of them for the last few holes. But Predator does weird things, and he's still taking home like $1.3 million, I think, for the second place finish. So he's doing okay. So we can sit here and criticize him, but he's laughing to the bank. So good for Straka, really good for Zalatoris to finally get that win, and congrats to anybody who followed Noto there and had some outright tickets. So that was the main storyline from last week. Obviously, that's going to get pretty much all of the press, and deservedly so, but it was a fun event. And you had kind of some names that we hadn't really seen in a while in the mix there as well. Lucas Glover, Brian Harmon out of nowhere with that top 3 finish, telling Noto to never question him again. We saw Adam Scott finish very well, and then you had some of the household names rounding out that top 10. John Rahm, Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau, another really strong finish. Fitzpatrick, 4 straight rounds of 68 or better. And then Sung J M finished 12th with a really solid round on Saturday. Justin Thomas inside the top 15 too. So had some guys kind of come up out of nowhere with some strong weeks, and then the leaderboard littered with top plays, which is probably what you're going to see here to round out the playoffs. And we get down to 70 from the 120 some that we had last week. So other takeaways from that event for you.
Yeah, I mean, the leaderboard ended up looking a lot better when it was all said and done than it did, to start Sunday. I think even the Live Tour tweeted out how bad the leaderboard was looking before Sunday, and then Karma bit them there with one of the better playoff finishes, in the last few years. So that was interesting. But yeah, you mentioned a lot of big names made the moves on Sunday. Tom Kim, another top 15. And then another thing we got to talk about, I mean, Cam Smith, he was the favorite heading into Sunday's round, gets assessed a 2-stroke penalty right before he tees off. You got to think that messes with his mindset. I mean, it was obviously big for me with Zalatoris ticket, but the timing of it all just seems a little too, I don't know, coincidental, I guess.
Now he has withdrawn this week, so It just feels like there's a little more to that story. Now, maybe we don't know yet. Don't want to speculate, but the Live rumors have been circulating with him for a while, and I don't know, it seems like there's something amiss there. But I do agree the timing on that was kind of bogus. Because did they assess it overnight? Or, when did it change on the leaderboard? Was it overnight? Was it?
No, he was the favorite the whole night. And then I think when he was on the range is when he found out, warming up for his round. So
I don't know. Weird. And I saw the leaderboard, and I was like, I swear Cam Smith was higher than this before he started. And then,
the rules quickly said that they saw it the day before when it was live on the broadcast, and then didn't talk about it again until the morning or something.
Yeah, it feels
like another
something.
thing. Like, it's kind of negative if you're, one of the better players, because every single shot is, magnified being on TV.
Correct. Yeah. It's really interesting. The first group off of the tee on Saturday, nobody's following them around unless they happen to be 2 big names or something. But such is life. Again, when you're a major champion and all that, I guess you got to take the bad with the good. But all in all, really interesting event. Lots of talking points, and we are down to 70 golfers now. But The aforementioned Cam Smith has withdrawn this week, and Tommy Fleetwood, I believe, is out as well, which takes us down to 68. And Wyndham Clark was the last golfer to squeak through at 70th in the standings, and he bogeyed the par 5 16th, and he bogeyed the 17th, and needed a par save on 18 to make it, and he got it. So he made it a little bit interesting. He was 4 over on his last 5 holes, but managed to squeak through in 70th place. And then after this week, it will be down to the top 30 for the Tour Championship next week. So other takeaways from last week for you before we move on?
No, I think we're good. This is the time of year when guys get hot. So, the Finaus, the Zalatoris, those guys, wouldn't be surprising to see them kind of run the table.
And part of what makes this week a little bit challenging is that we have no course history this week. It's the PGA Tour is randomly going to Delaware to Wilmington Country Club for the BMW Championship. So this event has rotated around to different venues throughout the years. It will be at another new venue this year. So we really don't know how this course is going to play. I mean, I think the last time this was used for any sort of a bigger event was like the Palmer Cup, I think it was, back in like 2013. So, the Palmer Cup in 2013. The only player in this field who played in that event was Justin Thomas, and the course has also had a lot of renovations since then. So there's almost nothing to glean from course history. We have no idea how the course is going to play, and so I mean that takes another data point, talking point away. Whereas we've had a lot of course history with some of these events over the past couple of months. So what do we make from a first glance at the course, and who do we think it benefits?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, there's never been a professional event here held here, but it is rated as the #1 course in Delaware, so it's got that going for it. It is a par 71 that measures over 7,500 yards. I do think everyone's just going to see, the length of the course and immediately think it's a bomber's track, which it might be. I don't know if it will be or not, but I was just looking at the individual, lengths of the holes, and the par 5s, 582, 634, 649. So I think, probably 2 of those are going to be 3-shot holes for most of the field. And then there's 3 long par 4s, and then there's 8 par 4s that are less than 450 yards. So a lot of short par 4s. And then 2 par 5s that are potentially 3-shot holes for pretty much everyone. So I do think that negates the bomber angle maybe a little bit. You could also argue that, some of the shorter par 4s, guys might be going for it, some of the longer hitters. So maybe that brings the bomber angle back. Depending on how firm and fast it is, maybe the 650-yard par 5, maybe they can get there in 2. Like you mentioned, we don't know how it's going to play. But the greens themselves, they are massive, 8,100 square feet on average. That's nearly twice the size of last week's greens at TPC Southwind. And there's bunkers everywhere, both off the tee and around the green. Bent grass greens and a lot of elevation changes. So you're going to see, some uneven lies similar to, Augusta, those types where you're hitting it up to perch greens on downhill lies, stuff like that. But I don't really know what to attack, really. I think you can, play certain stacks in terms of skill sets. If you want to target like an all bombers lineup or all ball strikers lineup, all putting lineup, something like that, I think that makes sense. I'm looking for guys that have played well on bent grass, guys that have played well on long courses, guys with a good track record, no-cut events, I think makes some sense. That's pretty much what I'm doing this week.
Yeah, I think it makes some sense, obviously, to lean on the ball strikers. The greens being so big, and this kind of a lot of times, some people are going to say the greens are huge. You're going to have a lot of 60-foot putts. You can't play the bad putters. Other people are going to say it's a new venue. Nobody's seen this. That negates the advantage of a good putter. So fit the narrative however it wants. If you want to play the bad putters, the Morikawas, the Hovlands, then use that second argument. If you want to avoid those guys, then you use the first one. A little bit of guesswork involved. Maybe you play them both in the same lineup and you play, different kind of golfers together. If you're building a bunch of GPP lineups, maybe you embrace the variance a little bit more. I mean, another thing, and this is remarkable. Noto did a little bit of his content earlier this afternoon, and then I was doing some of mine before the show. Our thoughts are going to be very identical on a lot of golfers this week, which is weird. But one of the notes that I saw that he wrote in the expert survey was that you're going to see the narrative this week that you can always build a stars and scrubs lineup because it's a no-cut event. And, why not take a couple cheap guys in order to get that win equity at the top? So why don't you just touch on that briefly before we start digging in?
Yeah, I mean, for the longest time, that's been my strategy in these no-cut events. And, I mean, it makes sense. You want to get win equity at the top, and everyone's guaranteed to play 4 rounds. So why not take some chances down low? But when you have bad golfers, when you get 4 rounds of bad golf, that's it's almost worse than 2 rounds of bad golf with the miscut. So I don't know. In a field where a lot of it's so stacked that you're going to get a lot of good players that are discounted, I certainly think the balanced approach is viable. If the winner comes not from the very top, then the balanced approach has a really good shot at being the optimal. So I'll play some cheap guys, but I don't think it's necessary, especially if you're playing cheap guys that you don't really like, just to get the studs.
I was with you on the explanation until you somehow tied it into a recommendation for Luke List, and then I got a little bit lost. But we'll talk about him a little bit later. We mentioned him last week on the show too. He's certainly not at the top, so we don't have to talk about him in terms of studs. But it will be interesting to see where people go at the top. We do have an early look at projected ownership on site right now. If you are watching us live, if you are a premium subscriber over at RotoGrinders, you can access that projected ownership either in the article or within the body of our lineup HQ tool. But basically, every golfer between 9,400 and the top is currently projected between 14 and 24% ownership. So you're going to see it spread out a little bit. Tends to happen a little bit more as these fields get thinned out and obviously strong at the top. And the pricing is somewhat loose for an event of this caliber. We've only got 4 golfers at or above 10K. So let's talk about them first. Knowing that there maybe isn't a huge step down to the next few golfers. This isn't a tier of 4. Just easier to talk about maybe 4 guys and then the next 5 or 6 as opposed to 10 at once. But we've got Rory at the top. Obviously showed some rust last week. Jon Rahm, solid finish for him. Justin Thomas played pretty well. And then Will Zalatoris, who obviously won. So 3 of the 4 guys had strong finishes last week. What do you make of these first 4 here this week?
Yeah, I think all 4 are pretty strong options. Rory, he lost 2.5 strokes off the tee last week, which probably won't happen again for the next 2 years. And he lost the Open Championship. It was a heartbreaker. So I don't blame him for missing the cut last week. I think you're certainly able to go back to him with confidence. Will Zalatoris, I mean, he's not a guy that's just going to rest on his laurels and just be happy with the 1 win. I mean, he is hungry. He's motivated. You could just tell, a lot of emotion last week, but I think he's going to stay out here grinding. He has a great chance to, win 15 or 17 million, whatever the first place prize is next week. So, I mean, if he's going to be the lowest owner of the bunch, I certainly like him there for an ownership play. But my favorite is going to be Rahm. I mean, had his best tee to green week last week since his win in Mexico. And I think he's really set up nicely the next 2 weeks. He has the best course history of anyone at East Lake. And I just think he's rounded into form a little too late for the majors, but just in time for the big paycheck.
Yeah, and you can tell that he wants it, and based on some of his comments from earlier in the year. And if this course does, I am leaning towards this course playing a little bit difficult. Again, it's a little bit of a guessing game, but I certainly don't think with the length of the par 5s, the fact that 4 approach shots are guarded by water, there are quite a few bunkers strategically placed, and there was some renovations done to this course to kind of put those into position for some of today's longer hitters. I think this course is going to play cold. And we know that Jon Rahm he's always get caught on hot mic complaining about the birdie fests that are 25, 26 under that you see on the PGA Tour these days. So if the course does play a little bit more difficult, I do think that suits his game a little bit better than some of the other courses. So another feather in the cap. I am with that call. I think Rahm is my favorite of the group. But all 4 are certainly fine. Thomas, the one maybe that worries me a little bit. But again, it's all kind of relative in the grand scheme. and you're just looking to maybe find a reason not to play one of these guys. But Rahm, my favorite as well. Like your argument on Zalatoris makes a lot of sense. It's not like this is your normal, okay, mid-May win, and now we're going to, course that nobody cares about. It's obviously the playoff time here, and you got to get up and ready to go for the next week. So, all right, let's go ahead and head into that next range of 9K options. Lots of high-end golfers with some winning upside in here as well. Cantlay, Scheffler, Finau, Schauffele, Fitzpatrick, all at 9,500 and up. Who do you like in there?
Sorry, I was going to bring up one more thing with Zalatoris.
Yeah, go ahead.
So look, we know he misses a lot of short putts, but overall he's a pretty decent putter. And if you look at his approach putt performance, so how far he leaves it away from the hole, basically lag putting after his first putt, he's third on tour. He's a great lag putter, and with these greens being so big, I think that's another feather in his cap for this week. Now, going into the 9Ks, a lot of good plays. I mean, you could certainly, argue starting your lineups here. You can get 3 of them pretty comfortably. Finau's been playing great. He's coming off of he's just been awesome. Sorry, recent. I have my columns mixed up here. But, he's been playing great, loves bent grass. Obviously, he likes difficult courses too and strong fields. Again, time of the year where guys get hot. I like going back to Patrick Cantlay. He wasn't great last week, but he's never good on Bermuda. Back on bent grass, I don't mind going back to Cantlay. Xander's another guy that doesn't have a big weakness. He's second in my model this week after Rory, so you're getting a nice discount there. Doesn't look like he's going to be too popular either. So I think just the one bad ball striking week is kind of scaring everybody away from him, but I'm fine going back there. Yeah, Fitz just continues to, grind out great finishes. He's going to be one of the safest plays on the board. Yeah, I think you can start with any of these guys. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, Schauffele for me, if you would have gone back 6 months, like at that salary, he would be the easy chalk on the board. And now that he's not, and he might up a little bit, but he's not going to be like 30%. So even if he gets up close to 20, you're not looking at massive chalk there. So Schauffele for me, I think is a guy. And then, we mentioned Fitzpatrick and all his improvement and all his top finishes, and he's added distance off the tee. Like, if there's like a most improved PGA Tour player award, like for this year, it has to be him, right?
Yeah, I think so. He's played so well. I'm thinking about ordering the stack system. I still haven't done it, but the speed training system that he used in the off season. So I don't think I'll have the same results as him. But
No, you're not going to go out and contend in the majors. Come on.
We'll see. Maybe that'll improve my DFS performance. It's been pretty bad. So.
All the outright hits are are keeping that afloat okay for you. So, all right, so probably Schauffele. For me, I do like Finau as well. He's been playing so well, and nobody's gonna let up at this point. So those are probably my 2 favorites. I do think as we head to the lower part of the range, I think Morikawa and Hovland are interesting, and they're kind of similar players in that they both really struggle with the short game from time to time. Right now, we've got Morikawa at 21% and Hovland at 10%. So I've tagged up Hovland. Yes. Again, if you consider the fact that nobody's really played here and it maybe gives less of a disadvantage to the bad putters, I'll play that narrative in some of my lineups, and that's really low ownership for Hovland. He's the first guy we've seen in the single digits as far as what we've got him at right now. So I'll definitely take some chances on him in tournaments. He's my favorite GPP guy to kind of round out that 9K range. Who are you liking in that Morikawa, Burns, Hovland, Im, and Julian Kim range?
We usually have some guys that we like, together, but we are on the same line of thinking this week. Love Hovland. You mentioned the first time everyone's seen the course. I think that certainly helps him. The large greens, he's actually a good putter. Over the last 6 months, he's 14th in strokes gained putting in this field. Over the last 12 months, he's 20th. So, definitely above the field average. He just is terrible around the green. Literally dead last on the tour. Strokes gained around the green. So I think the big greens are going to help. Ball striking's been good. At least it's trending in the right direction. So I'm right there with you on Hovland. Don't know what to do with Tom Kim. 7th week in a row. Eventually he's got to have a bad week, doesn't he? That's not a reason.
You'd think. You'd think fatigue would set in now, but it hasn't yet.
yeah, I don't know what to do with him.
I don't know. I think, but I said this last week too, and I didn't play him last week, so I don't know. I'm scared to fade him, but yeah, he's got it. Fatigue has to set in at some point. Has to.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you could say. Oh, sorry. I guess you could say, everyone's seeing this course for the first time, and usually he's at a disadvantage for course history. So maybe that's a reason to play him.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably be out on him, but you look at the way he's been playing, and it's certainly hard to argue with. So I don't mind it. Any other thoughts on these the end of this 9K range for you there?
Not really. I'm fine with Burns. No issue with Sungjae. Sungjae is very safe, but I like the guys in the upper 8Ks or 9Ks a little bit more.
All right, let's go ahead and head down into the 8K range as we go kind of from 8,500 9K. Again, still some quality golfers here. Your thoughts on some of those guys in that range there?
So it looks like Cam Young's going to be the most popular bet of the week and one of the more popular DFS plays of the week. He came off a second, and then last week finished 31st, but he lost 6 strokes with the short game. He ended up gaining, 9 strokes ball striking. So I think you can go back to him. Neiman played well last week, and then Homa it's hard not to like Homa anytime you get him on any of these classical tracks, and especially when they're on not Bermuda bent grass. So I do like Homa quite a bit. All right, so it looks like cards froze a little bit, so we'll do a little solo action right now. I'll answer some questions while we wait for him to get back on. Harry Brandt, aka Birdie Monster, aka Bogey Monster. I think he goes by both of those monikers. He was asking, how would you approach a single lineup in the 4-4-4-4 Millie Maker this week? And 500 total entries. He says some people are going to have 15 entries into it. For me, I would just build my favorite lineup, my favorite 4 guys, and then make two pivots maybe off of what you think is going to be chalk. Now, those things are always tough to predict because the higher stakes, the ownership can get really concentrated around a few different guys. So I think Cam Young's probably going to be one of those guys that gets a ton of ownership. Corey Connors tends to get a lot of ownership in those high stakes. So maybe make a couple pivots off of that. You could go with the no 10K lineup. I think that will be a little bit contrarian, taking 2 or 3 guys in the 9K. I certainly think is an option. John Hernandez says don't sleep on Homa or Spieth this week. Yeah, I like Homa. Spieth, man, I picked him. I bet him last week, and he looked terrible, but generally much better putter on bent grass, and the driving's been a lot better this year. So I don't hate that call. Bill Tomas is saying, Willie Z couldn't hit a fairway on Sunday and he still won. Yeah, that was, quite frustrating, watching him not being able to hit a fairway, but, he ended up getting the job done. So he's just so good. I mean, he's such a good iron player and then an underrated scrambler too. So, yeah, so let's continue in the 8Ks. I think Lowry's an interesting, sort of pivot play. He's obviously a great course fit if you want to, take any kind of course fit into consideration. He's pretty good off the tee, good with his irons, underrated short game as well. I know the putter's been ice cold, last couple months, but 8% ownership at 8,700, certainly interesting there. I don't think you can play Hideki Matsuyama in something like this just because he's miscut T68 and then he's withdrawn like 4 of his last 15 events, something crazy like that. And in a no-cut event, the only way you don't get all of your golfers to play 4 rounds is a WD. So nobody's going to play him. If you want to get a little bit different in your MME builds, maybe include 10% of him. But I think I'm just going to fade him completely. I like Corey Connors. 3 straight top 30s. His ball striking has been really good during that stretch. Ball striking tends to translate to every course, so you can certainly count on Connors. The short game, very hit or miss, obviously, but he's probably one of the safer options in the 8Ks. Hatton's been playing a little bit better. But, I mean, if you look at his stats, so I dove into this this morning. The event before this one, he had excellent ball striking numbers, which is why everyone played him last week. But last week he lost 3 strokes tee to green, and then it was all putting. I think he gained 6 or 7 strokes putting. So I want to see a little bit more consistency from Hatton. Aaron Wise, as consistent as they get right now. Gained 6.4 strokes ball striking last week and 3 top 35s in a row. And he's played really well in the stronger fields. I mean, he's had a great record at the majors this year. So I do like Aaron Wise at the bottom of that range quite a bit. If you guys have any questions, if Cards doesn't make it back, we can spend some time answering any questions. So throw those in the chat and I'll try to get to them. Now let's move into the upper 8K range. And man, we usually have a ton of golfers in the 7K range. It looks like there are only 15 this week. So definitely a little bit more interesting. Obviously, the field's a lot smaller than usual, but fewer guys in the 7Ks compared to the other ranges, relatively speaking. At the very top, you have Billy Horschel. I mean, typically a guy that plays a lot better on Bermuda. Missed the cut last week. I don't think I can go back to that. Russell Henley got off to a great start last week and then just had a terrible Friday, ended up missing the cut on the number. But he's gained 14.5 strokes on approach in his last 3 starts. He's a guy that hits a ton of fairways. So if the rough is as thick as early reports are suggesting, we're hearing 4-inch rough with bluegrass and fescue. So if it's tough to play out of the rough, a guy like Henley, who's very good with his long irons, very good with his mid irons, and very accurate off the tee, I think he's certainly interesting. You don't have to worry about him missing the cut for sure. Cam Davis has just been on fire. 5 straight top 20s. He's typically a guy that you don't play in stacked fields. He's kind of been a weak field specialist throughout his career, but there's no arguing the form. He's been a very good putter on bent grass throughout his career. I actually have him 7th in this field in strokes gained putting on bent grass. So if he can keep that going, I think he's interesting. Will be pretty popular. Harmon, my guy. I don't know if I can go back there at 7,700. Certainly no issue. I mean, he played great on Sunday. Gained 5.5 strokes on approach. His game has been trending in the right direction. So he does tend to play well in these strong field events. Riley, I haven't gotten him right in months. I mean, every time I play him, he misses the cut. Every time I fade him, he comes top 15. So if you are a premium member at RG, just ask me in the Discord whether I'm playing him on Wednesday night, and I'll give you the answer, and you do the opposite of what I'm doing with Davis Riley. I like Killer Keith Mitchell. Even though this isn't Bermuda, he surprisingly has better putting splits on bent grass than he does on any other surface. The approach play has been hit or miss, but he's a bomber, very good total driver. He's long and straight off the tee. I think that certainly plays well at this event, or well, at any event really. But any one though where you're going to have a lot of long par 4s, you're going to have to hit driver, and he's one of the better drivers in the field. Pendrith, another one of those bombers that hits it straight. He's gained at least 2 strokes off the tee in 7 straight events. Been playing some great golf since coming back from injury. I know he fell apart on Sunday last week, but I'd rather have a T68 where, you had 1 bad round rather than, 4 mediocre rounds. So we'll forgive him for that bad round on Sunday. Got a question from John Hernandez. Any dark horse picks to be in contention on Sunday? So we're going to get to one of them here in a minute. Mito Pereira down at 7,100 and that 7% ownership. If he ends up being anywhere close to that, I'll probably have triple, quadruple the field. Look, he's a guy that earlier in the year, he was just crushing. And then obviously almost won the PGA Championship. Didn't get the job done. He played a little bit. He played well the next couple weeks, but, miscut. And then last week he finished T42. So I think he's kind of rounding into form. He gained 3.5 strokes on approach. He's a guy that when he's at his best, he's an elite ball striker. No matter what timeline you're kind of looking at. So good drive percentage, he's 2nd over the last 6 months. Approach 10th, strokes gained ball striking 11th, green regulation top 10 in this field. So I think he's a guy that I will be massively overweight on. Other options in the 7Ks.
I'm back, Noto. Sorry about that.
He's back. I've been
I know
talking.
It's very difficult to go solo
Luckily, I've had a lot of practice with my videos, but yeah, I need some water break here.
The connection went on the fritz there for a second. Power flickered, and I had to reset the modem and all that good stuff. So 6 minutes. Seems like I made it back in 6 minutes, but I'm not going to open a bunch of tabs as things on my computer are still like reloading, and I don't want to send it on the fritz again. So, but I've got Lineup HQ up on my phone here to make sure we get through the range. But we were kind of going to the 8Ks when I lost connection, and I'm sure you went through your favorites, but Aaron Wise, Max Homa, I think are a couple of mine. I've seen a few people on Homa this week. You can kind of get him at 50-1, 45, 50-1 in a few sports books. I kind of like that as in a 68 golfer field to be able to get him at that kind of odds. And I know he hasn't had the greatest like summer compared to maybe where he was at 5-6 months ago. But I still think he's an interesting option, kind of in that salary range. And you look at Wise, who probably statistically profiles as one of the better options over the last few months. I think those are a couple guys that I'm looking at in the 8Ks. Maybe somebody like Neiman, obviously Connors if you're going to rely on the ball strikers. But who was your favorite in that 8K area?
Yeah, I brought up Wise, Connors, and Homa. So
yeah, we're on the same.
Very strange.
It's remarkable how similar our options are this week. So we'll our ship either rides or goes down together. I can't tell the outright bets though, because I don't want to be the one that jinxes the outright bets. But for DFS, we'll be on a fairly similar player pool, it sounds like, this week. So did you dig too deep into the 7Ks yet there before I came back?
Yeah, almost got to the end. So you give your favorites, and I'll just cover mine real quick.
Yeah, I mean, 6 from say 7.6K to 8K. Not a whole lot of options that I like. I think, this is the range, and you start to get towards the bottom end of the 7Ks is where maybe you just go after ceiling. Some of these guys that have been really hit or miss over the last few weeks that we've seen some top finishes from, but yet maybe they've been a little bit inconsistent. Say Pendrith had been having a really strong couple of months. We mentioned his ball striking last week. He didn't have the greatest finish last week, but again, he's shown that ceiling. Thigala, Davis Riley, guys like that, I think are interesting in the 7Ks. But otherwise, say 7.6K to 8,000. Cameron Davis, Harmon, Henley are all options that you can maybe consider. But if you need that salary savings, I have no problem going down into the Thigala range. Meter Pereira, if you look at stats, I'm sure he grades out pretty well in your model. I do like McCarthy at the bottom if you want to maybe rely on his short game. He did have another top 20 last week, and he's from Maryland, so one of the few kind of Northeast guys in this field. I guess Keegan Bradley kind of fits that mold as well. So interesting options in here. I don't think you need to go crazy and target everybody here, but I think there's some potential like top 10, top 15 plays in that range.
Yep, love Mito Pereira. Finally got the ball striking back last week. I wish you didn't bring up Denny McCarthy being from Maryland. I played him 2 weeks in a row, and he missed a cut. Faded him last week, and he crushed. And same with Davis Riley. I haven't got Davis Riley.
Yeah, I didn't play him last week either.
But Keegan's interesting. And then the other guy I like is Keith Mitchell. His driving is just going to be such a weapon anywhere. So especially if you got 3 long par 4s, you got 3 par 5s. I think you can lean on that. And you mentioned just guys that have a lot of high-end finishes. I think he's kind of fits the mold there.
Yeah, and that's what, again, we talk about everybody getting 4 rounds and that, but you're looking for ceiling with some of these plays as opposed to, in this type of tournament with only 68 golfers, you're not looking for 35th. You want to try to get somebody that can maybe sneak inside that top 15. So the 6Ks, and this is what's interesting and what part of what makes people go to more of a stars and scrubs type of build is because the 6K plays are a lot of golfers that we're used to paying 7K for in most fields, but they are the back end of this field because we're down to just 70 golfers. So guys like Varner, Kirk, who had been playing very well but had a hiccup last week. Grillo's been playing fairly well. You get guys like Troy Merritt, Brendan Steele, Cameron Tringali, These are all guys that we're used to paying into the 7Ks for, so everyone will think, well, I can just punt with this guy. And if you look at the tee to green, ball striking, anything not related to putting, Brendan Steele's numbers are still really, really good over the last 36 rounds. So you use the stars and scrubs theory to kind of make a case for List in the survey. I kind of will do the same thing with Steele if he can just get that short game going a little bit. I think that the ball striking has been there. So Steele is my favorite in the 6Ks. Who are you liking in there?
Yeah, if I like List, I certainly can't have an issue with Steele. Very similar players. Steele's is in better form, but similar to what you were saying. I mean, any time frame you want to look at, Luke List is top 10 in this field in strokes gained ball striking over the last 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And he tends to play no cuts very well. So he's not going to miss the cut. That's a positive. I like the Steele play. I think Stallings is interesting at 6,600. Ended up missing the cut by 2 last week. So, and then Chris Kirk, look, he struggled last week for sure, but he gained off the tee again. That's 17 straight of him gaining off the tee. If the rough is as thick as we think it might be this week, I'm hearing 4 inches. Then a guy that peppers fairways in the 6Ks certainly don't have an issue with that.
Yeah, no problem rounding out lineups with 1 or even 2. I mean, you go superstars and scrubs and get 2 guys in here. Not a lot of people do that. That the question would be whether that gives you enough upside. But if the 4 guys that you're spending on all finish, first, third, fifth, and 10th or something like that, then that ends up working out. So it all is a bit interesting with how the lineup construction comes together in these no-cut events. So. Let's see. Anything else that we missed? I thought it was weird looking at the schedule. The President's Cup is not during the break. It's after the first fall swing event and before the second fall swing event. Very strange, but it does not fall during that 2 to 3 week break that we've got coming up. So for what it's worth. All
right. Yeah. Shout out to the chat. We got a lot of questions tonight and some of the regulars from the Discord. So Andrew Sable, Harry Brandt, shout out to you guys.
Did you handle those while I was incapacitated there for a few minutes?
Yep, pretty much covered all the questions.
All right, just wanted to make sure we weren't leaving the people hanging there. So apologies for my own personal technical difficulties. Can't control the connection when the power goes out, but technology is always fun until it stops working. But got back and helped Noto wrap it up so that he doesn't have to go drink a gallon of water after the show. Somehow we made this show longer than our last couple, even though I thought it was going to be a little quicker with only 70 golfers. But it was plenty to talk about from last week, and most of this field at this point is fairly strong. So lots of options. We will not have a live show next week with only 30 golfers for the Tour Championship. There's really not enough to necessitate a live show. But if you are a premium subscriber over at RotoGrinders, we will have you covered with all of our usual written content. Of course, you can ask questions in the Discord, and we will we'll have you covered there as well. And then we've got a 2-week break. So we will see you for golf around the middle of September when the fall swing starts back up. Before that, though, don't forget, we've got football season coming up. You can check out betting picks over at scoresandodds.com. You can check out our premium package over at RotoGrinders. This is the time of year where it really starts to pay off to have that combo premium package. You've got NBA isn't too far around the corner. Football, college football is coming up. I think college football starts in like 11 days. Great time to be a daily fantasy player. Somewhat of a tough time to be a content provider, as I do some of the college football stuff as well. Juggling a lot of sports this time of year. Noto knows that feeling as well, especially once NBA gets going. But it's a fun time of year for sports, and we'll have you covered with everything over at RotoGrinders. So thanks to Steve for producing behind the scenes for us. Thanks to Noto for joining me and going solo there for 5-10 minutes. And thanks to all of you for watching. I am Justin. Good luck with your golf lineups, everybody, and we will see you in a few weeks here on Drive for Show DFS for Dough. Have a good night, everybody.